What's up, post-war people, and welcome back to the post-war show. My name's Derek Nash, and tonight's story we're going to be talking about AOC and the Squad and how their platforms that they ran on are going in direct opposition to how they're voting in Congress, but their tweets and their PR campaigns are still echoing Green New Deal, Medicare for All. But when it comes time to vote, just like Jimmy Dore had that big campaign for Force the Vote, they were all silent. Let's start with AOC's congressional ad that got her into office in the first place. Let's hear those promises.
Women like me aren't supposed to run for office. I wasn't born to a wealthy or powerful family. Mother from Puerto Rico, dad from the South Bronx. I was born in a place where your zip code determines your destiny. My name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm an educator, an organizer, a working class New Yorker. I've worked with expectant mothers, I've waited tables and led classrooms. And going into politics wasn't in the plan. But after 20 years of the same representation, we have to ask, who has New York been changing for? Every day gets harder for working families like mine to get by. The rent gets higher, healthcare covers less, and our income stays the same. It's clear that these changes haven't been for us, and we deserve a champion. It's time to fight for a New York that working families can afford. That's why I'm running for Congress. This race is about people versus money. We've got people, they've got money. It's time we acknowledge that not all Democrats are the same. That a Democrat who takes corporate money, profits off foreclosure, doesn't live here, doesn't send his kids to our schools, doesn't drink our water or breathe our air, cannot possibly represent us. What the Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, a federal jobs guarantee, and criminal justice reform. We can do it now. It doesn't take 100 years to do this. It takes political courage. A New York for the many is possible. It's time for one of us. Vote for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on June 26th.
Now, even myself, I have to admit that whenever she first made it on, I did buy into the whole Squad movement and the potential authenticity of it until the Force the Vote, and when I picked up on what she was doing during the pandemic and the stimulus legislation, her response to it, but what her vote and her abstention of vote and lying about a no vote really meant.
But we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history. Shameful. The greed of that fight is wrong for crumbs, for our families. And the option that we have is to either let them suffer with nothing or to allow this greed and billions of dollars, which will be leveraged into trillions of dollars, to contribute to the largest income inequality gap in our future. There should be shame about what was fought for in this bill and the choices that we have to make.
I can say with no hesitation and the highest of confidence that AOC is the one who should be ashamed of herself now, and she knows it, and I'm going to show you why. Please stay tuned, because you might actually learn that you need to break from the party like Tulsi Gabbard just from this video. The vote that she's referring to, the initial stimulus vote, she voted anonymously, yes, approved of it. Sadly, this has been scrubbed from the internet. I cannot find it with a Tor browser or anything anywhere, but I know it. I know it to be true. So the next alarming thing AOC did, besides the Met Gala dress and all of her other designer outfits that go directly against her democratic socialist purview, was the Medicare for All debacle, in which Jimmy Dore started this movement, this idea that as Nancy Pelosi is up for re-election as Speaker of the House, then the squad could force a vote on Medicare for all. Even though it likely wouldn't pass, it would expose which members do and do not actually support this bill because they're slaves to Big Pharma. That in turn, since Medicare for all has a 90% approval rating with Democrats, this would serve as a way to, come midterm time, really get rid of those people who were a part of the progressive caucus, but they're not really progressives and hold no progressive ideals. It's just an illusion, as with AOC and the rest of the squad, which I'll continue to prove in this episode.
It doesn't take 100 years to do this. It takes political courage.
So when she wanted your vote, she was saying, we can do this now, right? We can do this now. And why? Because every other country has done this now, except for the United States. 14 million people have lost their health care since the pandemic started. That's the only country that this happens in, is the United States. Even third world countries, Rwanda, everybody has health care for all now. Everybody has it, okay? And she said the time is now when she wanted your vote, and all it takes is political courage. And then she tweeted this out. She says the whole point of protesting is making people uncomfortable. Activists take that discomfort with the status quo and advocate for concrete policy changes. Popular support often starts small and then grows. To folks who complain protest demands make others uncomfortable, that's the point. And so I let her know it's time for you to make Nancy Pelosi uncomfortable and demand she bring Medicare for all up for a vote, or you will make her uncomfortable by withholding your vote for her as Speaker. If you do that, you get a Medicare for all vote. Now is the time. Stop being a Twitter warrior and do this. So you picked up on this message, Justin, and you tweeted this out. You said, if AOC and the squad don't do what Jimmy Dore has suggested and withhold their vote for Pelosi for speakership unless Medicare for all gets brought to the floor for a vote, they will be revealing themselves that power concedes nothing without a demand. Now, let me show people how she responded to you. She said, the problem with this idea is that there isn't enough thought given to step two. The Democratic votes aren't there yet. And with a razor-thin margin the Dems' knows are a greater margin. So you issue threats, hold your vote and lose, then what? If you want to know who's opposed, look at the co-sponsor list. So that's gaslighting. So that's her trying to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, because that's all transparent bullshit. Justin knows it, I know it, and everybody else on Twitter knew it. And I said she's gaslighting us. This is politics 101. Demand something for your vote. The Blue Dogs did this last time, and Pelosi caved. Only reason AOC won't do this is because she's a careerist who won't ever cross party leaders. I can't believe she would even try an excuse this lame. So let me just say what you said back, because she says the votes aren't there, and you say to her, well, why aren't they there? The people of the party are there. It's not acceptable leadership isn't there. It's not acceptable that the leadership isn't there if 90% of the party wants it. If they have no threat of not staying in leadership, what's the point? Pelosi was Speaker for 2 years with no Medicare for all vote. What is your plan to force her to get that vote? She doesn't have a plan to get that vote, Justin. You know that. And then you say one more thing. You say, would love for Democrats to be on the record denying their constituents health care during a pandemic. Sounds like a good politics for the progressive movement and our goals. And you are 1,000% right about that. That's exactly what this is for. I want to see who's going to vote against health care in the middle of a pandemic. That's what I want to see. I don't think they have that kind of balls.
So obviously Jimmy Dore made a really great political strategic plan and was gaslighted, was snubbed by the party who promised not to snub, especially if you make some noise. Now people are starting to come around. The squad has voted without fail to meet or exceed the aid amounts requested by the Ukrainians and buying more weapons than the military-industrial complex has asked them to purchase.
So here we go. So now somebody, so they're all voting for more war and nuclear war. So they're voting to ramp up the war with Russia and war with China. And we're on the brink of a nuclear war, and they keep voting for it. And so somebody confronted them over it.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because there are other war hawks, okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine. You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China. Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives.
There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb.
Good for you.
You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand up right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, simple. Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes or no?
So now I don't know if you saw what she says. She's telling him there's a line. If you want to ask a question, there's a line. Remember, she told us to cause a ruckus. Remember, she told us that you have to stop being polite and you have to start raising your voices. You have to start making people uncomfortable.
Time to queue up.
Somebody's doing it. Somebody's doing it to her because she actually has power now and she's voting for more war. And someone's calling her on it and she's telling her to be, hey, remember all that shit I said? It was bullshit. Forget it. It wasn't real.
We have no water in Jackson, Mississippi. Toxic water all over, Flint, Michigan still, but all over the place, a crumbling infrastructure, and we're still sending money for a proxy war to expand our world order. We're scared that the dollar's going to lose its reserve status, especially now that Saudi Arabia is joining BRICS, and our sanctions have completely went the other way. Now, since we blew up the Nord Stream pipelines, China's just buying Russian oil and reselling it to the Europeans at an even higher rate, costing us even more. So this is unbelievable how she treats these people whose position she advised them to take when she was running for office. But now the narrative is getting so commonplace among the public, who's more and more going to the internet for the news, that it's not just her as the only squad member being exposed to some pushback by people. Also, Ilhan Omar has had instances, but one was just yesterday. So let's take a look at that.
You are supposed to be a progressive Democrat, anti-war. Anti-war. 80 billion to Ukraine is not anti-war.
We are helping Ukraine defend themselves.
Ukraine is killing its own citizens.
Helping people
in the Donbass.
War. We are helping little children like me that have been helped. So unless you have not been paying attention to what is happening, there are millions of Ukrainians that have been displaced. There are piles of bodies that are being found in mass graves. There are little children whose lives are being lost.
By Zelensky!
Here.
Yeah, by Zelensky in the Donbass.
But unless you are someone like me that has been that child, you do not get to tell me what my votes mean and how I get to vote in supporting people who desperately need support.
Took an oath both as a service member, as a soldier, as well as a member of Congress to support and defend the Constitution. And that's an oath that I take extremely seriously. And so when you look at this party, the today's Democratic Party, it's controlled by fanatical ideologues who hate freedom. They despise the Constitution. They actively find ways to undermine our God-given rights enshrined in the Constitution, like freedom of speech. If you say something and I say something that they don't like, instead of saying, you know what, agree to disagree, live and let live in the traditional liberalist kind of way, no, that's not good enough. They will do all that they can to destroy you, silence you, smear you, work with big tech, work with corporate media to actively destroy anyone who dares to even question their agenda.